Good morning and welcome to the Grace Hour Show, a Christian program that takes a deep dive into our daily challenges and helps us learn our faith in a practical way. My name is Pastor Barry Quirk, and I'm here in the hot seat, joining Pastor Schaller this morning in the studio. And we've had a good start to the week. We've been speaking on training and preparation for a mission earlier this week. And so far, the men of God that we've covered have been Moses and Gideon. Pastor Schaller, we're talking about maybe the preparation of a person's life before they actually reach the point where they're called into a position with the Lord, and then what happens once they are called into that position and how the preparation that God's provided in their lives has helped them. So I think this is a great practical topic, even though we're talking about men of God who are in our Bible, who are, our heroes in the faith, so to speak, but in a way, really talking about us as people and how does God use us. So great to be with you here this morning and to talk about this topic about how David was trained for his mission.
Okay. There's a verse in Job where this subject of, like, you might assume older and wiser people might be preferred, Job 32 says, basically says that Elihu is speaking, and he said, days should speak, multitude of years should teach wisdom, but there is a spirit in man, and the inspiration of the Almighty gives them understanding. Great men are not always wise, neither do the aged understand judgment. Sometimes we think the old wise man, but there can be old foolish men. And sometimes we say young men are novices and they're not capable, but actually there is a spirit, the Holy Spirit, and when someone has the Holy Spirit, they can be trained, whether they're young or old, whether they are from China or North America, whether they're educated or not. So when we think about David, I think we have a very good example of a young guy that was called and somehow had those things that God noticed in him. That's written in 1 Samuel 16:7. But the Lord said unto Samuel, look not on his countenance or on the height of his stature. Now, this is when Jesse had all his sons pass before Samuel. And the Lord said to Samuel, don't look on how tall he is or his countenance, because I have refused him. For the Lord does not see as man sees, for man looks on the outward appearance, but the Lord looks on the heart.
Yes.
So, we can talk about David, but I want just to finish my comment here. When we look at Solomon, he was raised as a king's son in a palace, probably very little suffering, probably not a lot of problems. Personally, in the family, there were plenty, but Solomon maybe was privileged, like we say, a silver spoon in their mouth, right?
Yep.
But David is on the other side of things, was young, a shepherd boy, and yet God was with him.
Wow, that's a beautiful thought. And you hit probably one of the main topics of the whole picture, and that's the world has this view of looking at the outward appearance and seeing what's pleasing. And God has a completely different economy by which he operates, and that's that he's looking at our hearts. And the aged man who should by sight be the one who's ready to lead, and yet God has a still small voice in a humble beginning. And I think it is interesting that actually there's more written about the life of David than any other biblical character. There's 66 chapters dedicated to David's life, and that's not including the 59 references in the New Testament where David is talked about. And I had this conversation with somebody the other day about, when David says in the Psalms, search me, O Lord, and know me well, it's not because he has this great confidence in his flesh. but it's because he's really saying, Lord, search me. I want to know you. I want you to know my inner parts. I want to be clear before you. And what a great testimony for our, if we have any ambition in the Lord, if it's not the Lord's leading in the Spirit, we're going to be very disappointed, right?
Yeah,
and our only ambition is, I'm going to be a leader. I know how to do this, and I love the fact that David is just saying, oh, Lord, search me. I'm a young man, and I don't know all your ways, but I want to know you personally.
Yeah, David had a lot of success, but then we kind of feel that he wasn't living for success. He really had a heart for God, and when you have a heart for God, it's not about success. It's about knowing God. And that's the thing that we kind of see in his life.
Beautiful.
That even in the beginning of his life, when it seems that when he killed Goliath, it was a great success, but on the other hand, he just went back and tended the sheep. And you kind of get the idea. And even when he killed a lion and a bear, early in his life, it doesn't seem like that was public information or things that he would talk about when they're sitting around drinking tea, with his buddies. I don't know that he brought it up that much, or if that was the thing. It was more he had a heart for God.
Wow, and what a great example for a believer today, that we're not about ambition that serves ourselves, but we're about finding the will of God and doing it. And I love, it says in Psalm 63, in the B part of verse 1 to verse 3, "O God, you are my God. I shall seek you earnestly. My soul thirsts for you. My flesh yearns for you. In a dry and weary land where there is no water, thus I have seen you in the sanctuary, to see your power and your glory, because your loving kindness is better than life. My lips will praise you." And that was really David's attitude. His prayer and his psalm is, it's all about you, Lord. And what a beautiful way to, find our purpose in life. We think there are a lot of things that God leads people to do, and there are a lot of ambitious people, and they have the right kind of ambition. But I think it's beautiful when we find somebody who just says, I just want to be about my Father's business. And maybe that takes them to a successful place, but the success is really that we're locked in on finding out what the will of God is.
Yeah. Well, let's think of the many people that have grown up in a rural environment, by agricultural environment. I mean, farmers. Back in the days of the Civil War in North America, here, 3/4 of the country was agricultural, like in the South even more, I'm sure, maybe 90%. The rest industrial. Okay, so agricultural people, are you wealthy? No, but you have 100 acres of land. That was in New England. Like a New England farmer had 100 acres. A southern plantation owner had 2,000 acres. So the big difference. But the point is that rural people, agricultural people, like David in a small town like Bethlehem, wasn't thinking of being a king. He wasn't thinking of being that important. He wasn't raised with that in mind. When his brother Samuel said to Jesse, "Bring your sons here," bring your sons here, because he's going to anoint the king. Samuel knows that.
Yes.
But I don't think Jesse knows that. But so they all pass through, 7 of them, and then do you have any other? Yes, but he's the smallest and the youngest and so on.
He's the runt.
Yeah, he's the runt. So isn't that written for us? What do you think about that?
Yeah, no question that how God's evaluation system works is completely based on God's evaluation system. And like you said, Eliab, who was, he's a guy who looks the part. He looks the part. He's handsome. He's strong. He's a leader. And Samuel would say, "Hey, that looks like the man." But the Lord has something in the scrawny. And I like the depiction. In some cases, David is going out to feed his brothers who are out on the front lines against this mighty giant. And he's the cheese boy, really. He's like bringing a wheel of cheese and some crackers to fight. That's his support in the military. Yeah. And God uses him in the most important part of that whole conflict, just because of his availability and his willingness. And also, I love the fact that you said he's kind of nonchalant in the way he does things. It's like, I'm along the way and a lion comes, so I dealt with the lion. The bear comes, we dealt with the bear. The giant comes, there's smooth stones there to pick up and to use in the battle. But it's not about a ceremony or about, a grand scheme of how successful he would be, but it's about an obedience to what God has for the moment. And I think there's one thing that we've been privileged to learn in our ministry. We go to Christian school, we go to Bible college, we sit in the seats in the service. It's never about learning a religious procedure. It's always about learning a relationship with God. And in our preparation as young men, we're learning how to walk with God, how to fellowship with God in the details of life, how to be corrected by God, right? How to be strengthened by God. All of those things are so vital in our preparation for what he has for the next step. And if David wasn't a guy who could see the Lord in the practical details of his life, just like that farmer maybe on his plantation, if he could be led by God how to operate, then there is no success, because all he's got is a personal ambition or what he thinks is the right thing to do with God. And if there's one thing we've witnessed and we've seen in your life is you may have a plan set up, you might be headed in a certain direction, and the Holy Spirit wakes you up and says, I want you to do something different, and you're obedient to do that. Somebody could say, well, I don't know, that might be a little frustrating because I want a plan. Maybe. Yeah, but I've witnessed it. I've seen you not get on a boat, in Sweden when you were you were going to, and you change your mind, and it still works. But it's not about your ambition. It's about, I'm really thinking about what does God want for this situation, and we don't see that. We don't see the results of that unless we operate in it, right? And it's not a haphazard thing. It's like a, Lord, lead me today in your voice, and where should I be and how should I get there?
Like being a farmer isn't a guarantee. Living in poverty is not a guarantee. Because David had 7 brothers who also had the same upbringing.
That's right.
But why did David, why was he singled out? Why did, what did God see in him, know? But so his brothers are in the same environment, on the same farm, shepherding sheep. But David was, was different. He was different. So.
Yeah. Joseph and his brothers, right? I mean, Joseph is put in the worst possible situation, and yet he finds favor with the Lord by waiting on him even in the midst of that trial. And there is something really awesome about having the ear of the Lord, because you have the heart of God, and just waiting on God and seeing what God has for our lives that's a huge thing, and that we're active in our faith.
Practically speaking, I would like to say, I think that parenting teenagers, if you give them everything they want, then I think that's not what I think David was at the other end of that. David, he wasn't even called upon when Samuel said to his father, I want to take a look at your sons, and do you have any other one,
Yeah.
And yes, okay. So he wasn't even, sometimes in families, the youngest has the greatest privilege, the baby in the family. Are you familiar with that?
Yes.
The baby in the family has special privileges,
Yeah.
But it looks like David didn't have that.
Yeah.
I mean, we get that impression, right?
Yeah, kind of what's the opposite of the silver spoon?
Yeah.
That's kind of
right.
That's kind of how David's life was.
Yeah, maybe. So what my point practically is that when parenting our children, don't be afraid to deprive them of things. Don't be afraid of holding them accountable and responsible. It might be part of their training for greater things. We know that is true, and help them find their way to be accountable and responsible. And perhaps that was in David's training.
I would say park right there, Pastor. Keep preaching. As the principal of a Christian school, that's music to our ears. And really it is. We live in a world that's filled with entitlement, right? Like we feel like something is, we deserve something. And it's a modern thought, really, because when you think about pre-World War attitude, it was not, I'm entitled something. It was we don't have, and we make it good with what we have, and we're excited when we have something. And nobody's complaining about the apple that they got because that apple might be the best thing they get this week. And then there was a shift, obviously, of parents saying, I don't want my kids to ever be in the position I had to be in, so I'm going to work hard so they have something. And a great generation. And then as we see the generations going, we've gotten to the point where it's like, I don't want to work. I just want it to be given to me, and you should take care of me, and I'm your child. And what a far cry from what God has in the struggle, right? And how much do we learn in that struggle? How much do we learn being led by difficult situations and having to see God, prepare us and sometimes help us in our disappointment? This is something that in my family growing up, we spent a lot of time talking about disappointment because we didn't get a lot of things. We had what we had, and it was beautiful. We learned that God provided every single thing we needed to operate in His will. Actually, when you want to talk about privilege, I remember being 25 years old and having already been to like 19 countries on just a summer job, and not having this miraculous financial capacity, but how God would just make it possible if we were willing to follow in His footsteps. So that struggle, I love it. I think it's great. It's healthy. As you said, not having everything handed to you makes you reliant upon the Lord's plan in those situations.
Okay, so we have, can you say something about suffering? If we were to say David did grow, he had some suffering in his life. Did he, in his early years, did he have any? We know that when he brought the cheese and the bread out to the army, that his brothers chided with him about it.
Yes.
And said, what are you doing out here? Like, you don't belong here. Go back and take care of the sheep. And he answered them. So it wasn't as if, could you say something about going to school and having a tough time with your team schoolmates? Can you say something about being on a team and not being on the court? You sit on the bench. Could you say something about being misunderstood and mistreated and being treated unfairly, and yet maybe that's part of the training that God has for me?
Yeah, I don't read anywhere where life is supposed to be fair and you're just supposed to be handed success, right? It just doesn't, God gives, in a sense, it's fair that we all have the opportunity to have a relationship with Him. But I would agree 100% that there's something about, in the foundation of our country, it was a group of men who were willing to be available in a minute to go confront an attack that was coming on, and it was very much selfless. It was you're fighting for your brother, you're fighting for your family, you're fighting for your brother's family, and this was like our preparation as people in our school life and in our we often have people in this generation who are kind of helicopter parenting, like don't let anything bad happen to my child. I don't want them to face any kind of objects in their lives, and I think that's like. It's like having a child, and in some countries we've been missionaries in, the first 10 months of their lives, they're not even outside. They're just hidden in a room, and you're thinking, like, what are you doing to the immune system of these poor kids? Like, they need to go play in the dirt and, get an immune system built up. And the resistance that happens as a result of being faced with challenges is a very healthy one. And I think just the same way you're exposed, we have a school full of children, and people say, oh, it's a Christian school, so it's going to be a perfect environment. And I would say, no, it's a Christian school. So when bad things happen because there's kids involved, we're going to teach them how to navigate through those bad things. And the things that they suffer will actually be, they'll learn through them. They're challenges that they can stand up to and say, where's God's mind? And maybe the person who's suffering that challenge or the mocking or whatever it is, the deriding, that they could be the one that says, hey, God's mind is not like that, and I'm going to stand up for what God's mind is, and I'm going to be an example and a leader in that way. So, David's a guy who he's not moved ultimately, right? By whatever challenges he had. If anything, it just strengthened his position of hearing God's voice and then doing it.
Okay. So he goes out to the battle, returns back to the sheep, goes back out again, and that's when he realizes that this Philistine is defying the armies of the living God, and David has it in his heart, something,
Yeah.
He has it in his heart. Can you think of anything in your youthful days where you could just say, that these people have the status quo, that the Philistine is mocking us, and that's the way it is, but you had it in your heart that, no, I don't like that.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, I was thinking about, I was involved in youth hockey growing up, and we had, travel youth hockey teams, and it was the players who were kind of the better part of the intramural leagues where it was like, participation trophy here. But I was a part of a team that was get up at 4:30 in the morning and be at practice because that's the only time you could get ice time and play travel trips and go. And I remember being a believer. We lived in Lenox and traveling in this locker room and seeing, getting there and then having inappropriate pictures being put up or kind of a culture of like, we're the boys, we're the teenagers, we're the strong guys. And I remember being smitten in my heart by that because even though I was the same age and of the same, makeup, there was something that was different in me that didn't see that as edifying or having a good future, right? And for me, it was a challenge because you're faced with all these people who, in one sense, you're part of the team, you're successful, you're looked at as being, and I have kind of a quandary in front of me, like, am I going to keep my image as, one of the good guys and not confront this? Or am I going to say, I don't care what they think about me. I am who I am. And I was encouraged just based on what I had seen in the Bible and what I had seen taught to me. And I did that. I actually was like, I'm not interested in that and I don't appreciate it. And I let it be known. And I don't think it actually caused me. I think there was more relieved people actually, maybe that were facing that saying, I don't like that either, but I didn't want to speak up and say anything about it.
Okay.
But I think that's the kind of courage that God gives us when we can get to hear his voice, right? Like he says about the Spirit that he sends us his comforter in John 14:26. And it is during suffering, but also just leads us and guides us in truth. And what a great thing to be a young person. And this is something we harp on in school, is that we're not just looking to raise, religious people, but we want people who have a walk with God, who are learning how to navigate through their lives and have the kind of ear and the voice from the Lord that can be valuable in their generations, that they could be leaders. And we need those kind of leaders, right? We need the people who are going to go and hear the voice of God and be a little radical and not conform to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of their mind, Romans chapter 12 says.
So you could say that you had the Spirit of God in you, and then you were taught a certain way, and then when on the hockey team there was another spirit, another way, there was something in your heart that it just didn't agree.
Yes.
And so in a similar way, when David went out regarding Goliath, he's just something in his heart not agreeing with the whole thing. Yeah. And but it isn't his ego. It's just the Spirit bearing witness to him that this isn't right.
Absolutely.
I don't like it. It's
not even just the I'm right, you're wrong, or I have a point to make, or it's like God is grieved by certain things, right? And the enemy of the Lord, Goliath is not just a giant, and I gotta show that I'm a tough guy and I can overcome this giant. In one sense, who cares? What do you prove at the end of the day why you want to fight?
Yeah.
But the enemy of the Lord is standing in front of me, and I'm going to somehow, through the leading of the Holy Spirit, and just even like how he did it, picking up a smooth stone. You know, he's got 5 smooth stones and a slingshot, and he hits him in the head, and then he uses his own sword to cut off his head. It's just, in every way, it's so out of the box, but it's exactly how he ordained for it to happen. The part that I get encouraged about is like David is willing to go along with this trip because he hears from God in a personal way. And maybe that's the thing about the preparation for the mission, is that it doesn't even really matter how we start, you know, because maybe there's somebody who is a mighty, you know, lives in a privileged situation or is in riches or wealth, but doesn't settle for that. They see there's something better, right? There's something and it's that walk with God, that personal walk with God.
Yeah. If we fast forward, David had a son, Solomon. He had many sons, but Solomon was the one that God chose to be the king. And then Solomon, once in power, it looks like the power goes to his head, to be honest. Like he had 1,000 women. He had the huge empire. He was building buildings. He had a big army, chariots, horses. Remember, the king was not to multiply gold, horses, or wives, and he did all 3.
He was 3 for 3.
Yeah, he did all 3. So, but he was still a man of God. There was a time when he wrote the Proverbs. He made decisions. His country did develop. There was a time of peace, and he was successful. But I wonder if we were to ask, you know, how did he get prepared in his youth versus David, a farm boy in Bethlehem shepherding sheep? He was prepared in his youth.
Yeah.
And what happened, David's life didn't go that well either. However, he continues to be the sweet psalmist of Israel and the man after God's own heart. Though he failed.
Yeah.
He did fail in individual things. But it looks like Solomon's failure was like very much rooted in mental thought patterns of arrogance and power.
Yeah, and as dads, you know, what is our responsibility to our children? And you know, you have a son who's you have more than a son. You have children, and just became a great grandfather. Congratulations, that's amazing. What an amazing thing. But you know, and I've had the privilege of being kind of observing how things go, and just that you have a walk with God, and there's going to be times when it doesn't automatically transfer to our kids, right? Like our kids they can say, "Oh yeah, Dad, he's all about that," but I'm not about that right now. And like,
my dad loves Jesus. My dad, but then what's the but part?
Yeah, well, I mean, even just that you have, you want to sit down and watch a football game, and then about a quarter in, you're like, I got something else I need to do, and you're up and gone, right? And everyone else is like, what are you doing leaving? This is the best part of the game, right? But you have a personal walk, you have a responsibility for your time, you're led. And at the same time, you don't have an unrealistic expectation of your children. And I think that you don't have that unrealistic expectation, but you're faithful and you're consistent and you're not turning a blind eye to their upbringing. You're encouraging them and giving them the truth. But somehow that capacity, in the right, like being here.
How can you transfer it, you mean?
Yeah, well, I mean,
there's one capacity and then there's another one.
That's right. And
you have David and then you have Solomon.
That's right. Yeah, and actually his challenges in life, and we hope that at some point in our lives, our kids, when they go through their challenges or they have their wayward ways, that there's something in them that brings them back to the truth, that the plumb bob becomes obvious in their lives again, right? And
I do think what happened to you on the hockey team, and you just got grieved and you felt it, I think that happened to Solomon too.
Yeah.
And then maybe he got beyond it, and you get maybe hard.
Yep.
And like we say, familiar.
Yes.
But maybe hard-hearted, and you just don't have that sensitivity anymore.
Yeah.
And then there's the playing around, and you're part of that. And then maybe suddenly you wake up out of a dream or something, like you wake up and you realize, oh, I played the part of a fool,
Wow.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, we're given X amount of years in this life, right? And we spend some of them very wisely, and then we can all think of times that we just have, we just haven't spent the wisest ways, or we've let them be frittered away. And to think that God would be willing to use us no matter what, right? Like, this is the beautiful thing about a walk with God and relationship with God. We wake up in the morning, and as you've often said from the pulpit, I can wake up in the morning and say, I am wrong. Like, I'm wrong. God, I need your thoughts today. And I really, that's, resounded with me a lot. Like, I could wake up in the morning and knowing that I have a responsibility. I have a responsibility here on campus. I have 25 employees who are listening to what I have to say in a devotional or my direction in the school. And I have to know going in, like, God, this is not a work of me. I can't do this. I can't do this. And I often say to them, how I know I'm called to this job? Because when I leave my driveway, I'm scared to death, like doing the wrong thing. I just want to, in a healthy way. On the other hand, I say, Lord, you've brought us to this place. This is your work. You have a way to lead it forward. You got to be faithful in it. And I think about even in our families, like when we in a sense, we do what God leads us to do, and then we kind of have to step away and say, okay, like, I planted the seed, I put the water on there, the sunlight, and now I got to wait for the fruit to grow. And in its season, it grows, right? Isn't that a beautiful kind of picture? And David with Solomon.
Absolutely. And maybe, let's say your daughter Kendall has one of those moments where her heart is touched, but you never see that because it's so personal. But that's what we believe happens to our kids. Like, we want to believe that, and I'm sure if it has happened to us, why wouldn't it happen to them?
Absolutely.
And if the Lord answers our prayers and decisions that we made, then I'm sure it happens to them. But they are not going to get on the phone and say, Dad, you won't believe what just happened to me. I had a God moment.
Yeah. No, wow, that's a good point.
No, they don't do that.
That's right.
But that's okay. We don't need it, but we like to hear about it. But it might not be like appropriate to be, because it's not like waving banners and fireworks and stuff. It's a personal thing.
Yeah, I remember growing up, and my mom always saying, "Oh, what happened today? What'd you learn?" And you just want to go, Mom, just stop asking me questions. Like, this isn't about that, And actually, the funny thing for me is she used to say, "How did school go today?" And I was like, "The same as yesterday." All right. Yeah. And I thought, I can't wait till the day that I don't have to hear, "How does school go today?" And now I'm a principal of a school, and my wife says, "Hey, how did school go today?" And I'm tempted to go, "I don't want to talk about school," but she really does she wants to know how'd it go. I'm praying, I'm with you. And as you know, our wives they pray together. They have groups. They're praying with each other. It's an amazing thing. And I do love that. That's such a good point. And thank you for bringing that up, that our kids have walks with God. And I've seen it, in a very clear way with, but it's different. It's a private walk with God in one sense, or maybe my father-in-law, who's since gone home to be with the Lord, was a Greek Orthodox, kind of a proud, strong guy. And he got saved, and he had a walk with God and a relationship. And actually, when we went and found his Bible after cleaning things out, there was it was so clear, the underlined portions and and you just go, wow, like there was all that going on. And we're far away, so we didn't get to witness it all the time. But it wasn't like he wasn't going to call his daughter and say, "Hey, I found out that you're walking with God in this particular way has been right all these years. It was just he made a decision.
Yeah.
And thank God he did, and it was a beautiful decision. But it's private and it's before the Lord, as you said. It's not about a banner. It's about a walk in a heart. And this is such a beautiful thing.
It is.
Yeah. We have a lot of people joining us in the chat this morning, just giving us encouragement. Thank you for that. And congratulating you on the birth of your great-granddaughter. Wow.
Yeah.
That's so amazing.
We did FaceTime today with her.
Oh, my
Bethany
goodness.
was holding her, I said, Bethany, I can't believe you're a grandmother.
I can't even. Oh my gosh.
That Lulu is there. They're over in Finland. They're going to the church tonight, for service. And the baby's 5 days old. And
wow.
Beautiful.
What a heritage,
Yeah, right.
I just love that they're continuing on the work of God. And this is, I don't know, for us, we kind of, we romanticize our lives, but really we have amazing lives. We, and they started out with small conversations at a Dunkin' Donuts on a napkin, right? Or
right.
You're dreaming about going back to Hungary after being, back here for a season, and then God just does it, and people go, and things happen. And we just had a student from GGIS who came here to visit us and wanted to see where did it all start, because she recognized, that there's something pretty awesome about you leaving here and going there and meeting us and giving us a place. And that's the work of God. And if we don't have this preparation in our hearts, like we see in David's life, where he was able to be, in his heart, not be one of those guys who God said, the outside is important. He said, look at the heart. And he's a man after my own heart, which I love, that God can use us in that way.
Maybe we could just finish and say to mothers that are raising a family, teenagers that feel you're misunderstood, young adults, the Lord knows your heart, and just like David, and the Lord hears your prayers, and your life is not in vain. Stay encouraged. There are people praying for you, loving you, and if not, then have a group and invite them into your life, and invite them into, please keep me in prayer. I'm raising a family on my own.
Yes.
Or I'm brokenhearted. Please keep me in prayer. And the Lord will hear your cry, the cry of the prisoner. The Lord will help you. The Lord will answer your prayers and the prayers of other people. Your life is not in vain. Stay encouraged.
Beautiful. And today, maybe there's somebody listening who's a young person who's in middle school and thinking like, I just go to the youth study on the weekend and I don't really have a place. I don't really share anything.
Nobody knows my name.
Yeah, I'm just an anonymous guy. And I could list, we could list how many, our pastors are out in the mission field or leading churches here. And
Same thing.
Yeah, they were just guys in the middle school, or they were, in the high school on the golf team, or, just doing their thing. And God is just anxiously awaiting for them to have fellowship and to pour out his blessing. And that's an encouragement. And my personal testimony is that I was 9 when I got baptized, Pittsfield Lennox Road in the Holiday Inn pool, because that's where we had our place to do baptism. And I remember Pastor Stevens, who did the baptism at the time, kind of challenged me, and he said, if you'll honor God with all your heart, he would love to honor you. And those words kind of stuck in my heart through these situations. I think that's one of the reasons that decision in the locker room, because of course we have flesh, and our flesh could be like, oh, that's something stimulating to the flesh, but God had such a more rich reward for us, and that we could learn that as a young person. And I'm just thinking, like, people's faces flashing in my eyes in our school that 5-10 years from now could be on the stage sharing a message encouraging the entire body of Christ, and somehow we get to witness that and be a part of that, and that's a beautiful thing. And what a great way to pass the time of our sojourning here on earth, right? In
Yes.
fear. So So this is a great topic. It's really been awesome to be with you, Pastor Schaller. I'm excited that today's Wednesday and we have a service here in Baltimore. It's going to happen right here in our chapel.
Yes.
That'll be at 7 o'clock tonight. And, we each and every day have this word coming from in the weekdays from the Grace Hour. And we have all the preparation that young person could ever want. They could stay faithful. They could go to our youth camps. They can listen to the messages and just believe God, right? Believe God that he could do something above and beyond.
Amen.
Yeah. So thanks for joining us today, folks. We're headed into the rest of our Wednesday here. We hope that you'll join us the rest of the week here on the Grace Hour and keep our campers in prayer. Pennsylvania as they camp today. And join us if you're in the area tonight. Join us at our service right here in Baltimore at 6025 Moravia Park Drive and come hear a message and be built up.
And a shout out to Coimbatore, India.
Yes.
Pastor Guru, thank you for your work and ministry. God bless.
God.